Hi guys, so today we're going to do our Unit 10 reteach. So this is just getting you prepared for your Unit 10 retest if you are taking it. So we're going to start with number 1. We're going to simplify the following expression, the square root of 60. So as I look at the square root of 60, I'm going to break it up into numbers I know that multiply into 60. So my first thought process is I know that 6 and 10 multiply to give me 60. And as I go and break up each number, I'm going to cross it off so I don't use it when I go and actually split up later. So I'm going to split up again 6 into 2 and 3. And I'm going to split up 10 into 2 and 5 because I know those 2 times 3 does give me 6 and 2 times 5 gives me 10. So as I'm looking at my options here, I want to figure out what is going to actually go into the radical and what's going to stay outside. So as a reminder, things that are the exact same number, as long as there's a pair of them, they can come out, and it only has 2 to come out. So we need a pair to come out. I do see that I have 2 2's, so if I have 2 2's, that means I do have a 2 that can come out. But I do also notice that I have a 3 and a 5, and they don't have pairs. So since those are my 2 that don't have pairs with each other, I'm going to multiply them and keep them inside the radical. So 3 times 5 gives me 15. So 15 is going to stay under that radical. So my final answer is going to be 2 square roots of 15. On number 2, it says the function g is in the form y equals ax squared plus c. If the values of a and c are both less than 0, which graph could represent g? Okay, so my first focus I'm going to look on is the fact that c has to be less than 0, okay, and c's location is right here. So that means that if it has to be less than 0, that means it's going down below 0. So I'm looking at my options. So my first one that I see here is I do have some number that went down below 0, so that one works. On this one, C went up instead, so that doesn't work. On this one from 0, I did go down, so that one works. And my last one, I actually went up, so this one doesn't work. So already I am eliminated to 2 different answer choices. The next thing that I'm going to focus in on then is the fact that A itself also has to be less than 0. Okay, so my A value. So that means that I'm looking for a number less than 0. Well, those are going to be negative numbers that are all less than 0. So as I look at my different choices, A being negative means that we're going to flip across the x-axis. So a negative A flips across x-axis. So as I'm looking at my answer choices, my first one here does not flip across the x-axis, but my second one does. It does make that frowny face. That's what happens when we flip across. Therefore, my answer is going to be this bottom left answer. On number 3, it says, Jake graphed the quadratic parent function f of x equals x squared on a coordinate plane. Which statement about the relationship between the graph of f and the graph of g of x equals x plus 3 is true? So you could graph this if you really wanted to, but we should know our transformation. So the first thing that I'm seeing here as we're looking at these transformations is plus 3, okay, is inside parentheses. This means I'm either moving left or I'm moving right. Okay, so if I'm moving left or right, that means I cannot move up and down. It's not outside the parentheses. So I can go ahead and eliminate answer choices C and D because outside the parentheses means up and down, inside the parentheses means left and right. Now, as a reminder, inside the parentheses, we have a opposite value that comes out of it. So if I have a plus 3 on my graph, I'm going to have the opposite of plus 3, which is going to be negative 3. So I'm plotting at negative 3, and so when I go from 0 to negative 3 on a graph, I'm going to be moving left on that graph. So my goal is therefore that I'm going to end up moving left. So my answer is going to be A. On number 4, it says which of the following is the correct equation for the given graph. Okay, so I'm going to go through all my answer choices and figure out what the vertex is of each one of these since they are in vertex form. And then I'm going to cross-examine that with my graph and where its vertex is at. So let's first start with the graph part. So this is the vertex. This is the very highest of highs of this graph. And so as I'm looking at it, I move over to -1 and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So my graph vertex is at -1, 4. So that is my goal of finding. So with that being said, I'm going to go to each of my answer choices and see which one has that -1, 4. So inside parentheses is the opposite value. So if -4 becomes +4, outside parentheses stays the same. So this one is going to be 4, 4. Next one, inside parentheses is +1. This is going to become -1. Outside the parentheses stays as 4. Next one, I have +4 inside parentheses. It's going to come out as -4. Keep the +1. And I have +1 inside that parenthesis. Going to come and bring it out. So that's -1. Keep that -4. So I'm looking for -1, +4, and that's going to be this second answer choice here. Okay, and the reason why I kept trying and looking at my other pieces is because if I ended up with 2 with the same vertex form, we would then want to cross-examine some of the other different pieces of it. Okay, so let's look at number 5. So it says write the equation of the quadratic function that has a vertex of -3, -6, and passes through the point -5, -14. Okay, so we're going to do the same process that we just did a second ago of pulling out the vertex of each one of these. My goal is to find one that matches -3, -6 first. So first one, opposite of -3 is +3. That's what I do to those parentheses. And then we're going to bring that 6 out. Again, opposite of +3 is -3. And then we also have -6 stays as is. Next one, -3 becomes +3. 6 stays as is. Last one, -3. And then -6 stays as is. Okay, so looking at my answer choices, I already know that the first one and the third one do not work because it doesn't have the vertex of -3, -6. So now the 2 pieces I'm left with are going to be possible choices that I have. So at this point, I could either graph it or I can kind of look at the A value and see what's going on. So A value would be here and A value would be there. Now I notice that I'm going through a point -5, -14, and -5, -14 is below -3, -6. So -5, -14 goes down for my graph. So if I'm going down, that means I'm going to have my graph flipping. So I'm going to end up going with a graph instead that goes from -3 to -6 like this, okay? -5 is and -14 are actually below this graph, so I'm actually looking for a graph that looks like this instead as I'm moving forward. So if that's the information that I have, that I'm actually going down instead of up, that means I need something that reflects across x-axis. And so if I'm reflecting across the x-axis, that means I'm looking for a negative A value. So coming back over here, this is no A value, which is assumed to be 1, okay? And this one has a -2. So the only one that has a negative A value is my last answer choice, so that will be my answer. Again, at this point we could have graphed it, but I kind of wanted to reason out some of the process of why I ended up picking without having a graph. Okay, number 6, what are the zeros of the given function? So on this one, I'm going to try factoring. So we have the number -18, and I want to factor it out to give pieces that would equal to -18 by multiplying, but add to 3. So I know I have -18 and 1. I have, we could do -6 and 3. We could switch that, and we could do 3 and -6, negative 3 and positive 6. And we can also do negative 1 and positive 18. So I'm going to go ahead and add these all up together. Negative 18 plus 1 is negative 17. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 6 is positive 3. And negative 1 plus 18 is positive 17. I'm looking for positive 3, so these are my pieces that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and break up. So we have x minus 3 is equal to 0, and we have x plus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, I'm actually going to move that x plus 6 over here. So we have x plus 6 is equal to 0. And we're going to go ahead and solve. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides on the first one. So I get x is equal to 3. And I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides. So I'm going to get x is equal to negative 6. So the zeros of my function are x is equal to 3 and 6. Sorry, negative 6. Okay. And last one, what are the solutions to the given equation? So we're going to go solving through this one also. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 2. So I'm left with x plus 6 raised to the second power is equal to 98 divided by 2. So in my calculator, I put 98 divided by 2. I get 49. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and square root these pieces. When I square root, I'm left with x plus 6 is equal to positive 7 or negative 7. Because that square root can go either way. So that means I'm going to have x plus 6 equals 7, and I'm going to have x plus 6 is equal to negative 7. Okay, so as I am, again, I have x plus 6 equals 7, and x plus 6 is equal to negative 7. So I'm going to go ahead and solve these. So I'm going to subtract 6 to both sides, and I'm going to get x is equal to 1. And again, I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides. I get x is equal to negative 13. So my solutions is x equals 1 and negative 13.